that it was a kind of a welcome guys to day 9, and today we'll be discussing about one important concept which we did not discuss, actually missed out on the last class. So while using the corresponding operator, did you see that it was a kind of a normal mapping, right? It's a kind of a simple mapping, right? A structure or an internal table. What if it becomes a deep structure or a deep table type? Tell me, Ankit. What if it becomes a deep structure or a deep table type, or if it requires a complex mapping? Ankit, Prasad, what do you think?
Kabir, for the old syntax, there was a keyword expanding the nested tables, like something that.
So expanding the nested tables, that was for the older one. But what if I want to do everything kind of a thing, like how? So example, so basically there is a class CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding, okay, and from this class actually there are two main methods which you need to make use of it. Okay, one is your create method for creating the mapping object. Based on this mapping object, which you will use to have the data transfer between the source and the destination. So step number 1 is to get your mapping object created. Step number 2, execute the same mapper class. Execute the whatever you have got from this mapping object, execute the same to pass the data transfer between the source and the destination. Okay, and if you see this CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding create source, it can be either a structure or an internal table. Similarly here the destination can be a source or internal structure or internal table. In this mapping it has a mapping table, and in case if you have a discarding duplicates, as we saw in the last class, right, discarding duplicates, then this will come into picture. Otherwise these three parameters. Okay, now with respect to the mapping table, the important concept which comes into picture is, which helps to basically move the data between the structure and internal tables through the dynamic mapping. This mapping table has got 4 components: level, kind, source name, and the destination name. So level, if you can see from this keyword level, this will help you to do whether it's a kind of a deep structure which you're trying to map or on the same level that you're trying to map. Kind, this kind has got different values based on what you need. If you want the normal as usual component to be mapped, as in the same components to be mapped, we will go with the kind value as 1. Okay, suppose if you do not want to map something like except we had, right, in corresponding hash except, similarly here, then you can put the value as 2 in case if you want to do not map anything, or if you do not want to map anything at all, mapping except all is 3, and in case if discarding duplicates, then you need to pass the value as 9. And this is your normal, the component of the source name and the component of the destination name. Let's look at it with a simple example. So what I have done here, there is a structure which has got 5 components A1 to A5, another structure which has got 5 components B1 to A5, but these two are matching, A4 and A5, and this two A4 and A5, and B1 and B2 to B3, and A1 to A3 is different. So we want to do the mapping between the structure 1 and structure 2 now. So how do we do that? First of all, data mapper equals to CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding. We remove this. Okay, and then use the create method. Okay, now if you see source destination mapping discarding duplicates, here I'll not need this, and let me remove these two as well. Now Source and destination. What is the source? From structure 1, I want to pass to structure 2. Okay. And mapping. Now for this mapping, I will create the mapping table on the spot using the value operator, CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding. And after that, there is a static method called mapping table, this one. Now can you see level, kind, source name, destination name? So on this level, what will be the value? 0. Kind, I want to do the normal mapping 1. Source name and destination name. So what I want to do for this A4 and A5, so it's fine. But for this A1 to A3 and B1 to B3, I want to map B3 with A1. Okay. So B3 with A1, what I'm going to do? So A1 and B3. This is for a single record, right? What if I want to get for multiple records? So I'll do one thing. I'll pull this. So this table, now level 0, then kind 1, then source name A1, and then this destination B3. Okay. Now again I'll create one more record as such for this, but here I will map B1 with A3. Okay. Now I'll close this and I'll remove this. I'll activate my source code. Okay. Now let's see what happens. I'll put on the debugger. Okay. So tell me now, I've just created the mapping. Will my data transfer happen? This is structure 1. Text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4, text 5. This is structure 2. Text underscore 1, underscore 2, underscore 3, underscore 4, underscore 5. Will my transfer happen to structure 2? Is anything missing? Have I completed the mapping? Something is missing, right? Yes. Execute statement is missing. So mapper. Now from mapper, it has got an instance method called execute. And now source and destination. What is the source? Structure 1 and destination structure 2. Now if I execute, so I'll do an F6. Now see structure 2. Now once I do this execute, can you look at these values? And since A4 and A5 was having the same component name, right? That got mapped automatically without me giving anything. And these two, since it's specified as to this will map with which particular component name and this will map with which particular component name, these two got mapped. Now, if instead of writing like this, can I write like this? I'll remove the mapping, this. Can I write like this? Yes or no, guys? Can I combine both the statements? The creation of the mapping table and the execution of the mapper. Can I combine both? I can combine both, right? And now if I do an F8, and now if you see structure 2, observe here structure 2 and F6, can you see the same behavior coming? Right? So you can club both the same also instead of breaking up into two different statements. Now, another thing. What if I do not write this? So let me now tell me one thing, guys. What will happen? What will happen if I do not specify this source name, destination name here, and I remove this line? What will happen? Tell me, guys, what do you think? What will happen? What could be the expected change? Anyone? Only A4 and A5 will be mapped. What about the others? What about the others? Will it become initialized? Will it retain their base value? What will happen? So Ankit, you are telling the base values will be retained and the identical components will be mapped, right? Any other answers? Who are having some other opinion? So Harish says that no values will be retained. Okay, let's have a look at it. So this is my structure 2, right? I have not given anything. So if I do an F6 and structure 2, can you see the base values are retained? This is your very simple form, corresponding hash base and nothing else. The base values are retained, right? Guys, remember corresponding hash base. Similar to that. So Harish, the base values will be retained. That's the advantage of it here. The identical components, whichever it will match, that will map, and the base values will be retained. So this is a very simple basic form of using this CL ABAP corresponding class. Here the identical components will be mapped and rest will retain their base values. Okay. Now let me give you one more scenario. Similar to this one, guys, now tell me, I'll use this. Now here, what if I remove this level 0 also? What if I remove this level 0 also? Is this and this identical, or is it something different? Are you expecting the same output here also, or do you expect some different output? So Prasad says same output. Anyone else has got any other opinion? So see here, this is my structure 2. I have passed only kind equals to 1 and nothing else. Okay. And see the output. So even if you do not specify the level, and if you are specifying just the level and kind, and if you omit that level also, still without that level also, no mapping will happen apart from the what? Apart from your identical components. Yes, by default it will go with level 1. Sorry, level 0, not level 1, Prasad. Initially it is level 0. So I just kept kind equals to 1 here. Now guys, tell me one thing. If I make kind equals to 3, look at this PPT, kind equals to 3. What do you expect as the output? Kind equals to 3, look at this PPT, kind equals to 3. What do you expect as the output? Kind equals to 3. This one. What do you expect as the output now? Tell me. What is the expected output? Can anyone tell me? So kind equals to 3 means what? Mapping except all, right? So now, if I structure 2, so this is thing. Now if I do an F6, do you see any change? Mapping except all. Mapping except all. No changes that you are going to observe here, right? And the base values will also be retained. Understood, guys? Now, let us do one more thing. Comment this. I'll take this scenario again. Put it here. And now what I'm going to do, apart from this, I will add one more entry to this. And the entry will be level equals to 0. Okay. And kind equals to 3. Guys, now can you tell me what is the expected output for this one? I just did a bit of a modification to this one now. What is the expected output for this one? Anyone? So let me trigger the breakpoint again. So this is your structure 2. This is the initial value of all of its components. And if I do an F6, this got mapped on the component that I specified, B1 with A3, B3 with A1. B2 remains as it is. A4 and A5 also remains as it is, right? Did it get mapped? No, right? Because I specified level equals to 0 and kind equals to 3, remember? In the other case, what had happened? These two had got mapped with its identical components, yes or no? If I had not specified that particular row type. What do you say, Ankit, Prasad and all? So a slight addition of another one more row with mapping except all, that is the value kind equals to 3, gives me a kind of a twist here. Now let's create one more scenario. Now you tell me. What I'm going to do now is I'll create one more, and here I'll make kind as 2. Okay, source name as suppose A4. So mapping except component. Now I'm going to try this one, mapping except component, and destination name as A4. Guys, now tell me what is the expected output that you're expecting. What is the output that you're expecting from here? Tell me. Anyone? So A2 and A5 will have their base values, and what about A4? What about A4? So you are telling A2 and A4 will have their base values, right, Ankit? A4 or A5? Okay, you are telling A2 and A4. Okay, so let's look at it. So this is your structure 1. Look at the initial values of structure 1. Now this is your structure 2. Okay. If I do an F6 now, B1 will obviously get mapped to A3. B3 will get mapped to A1. B2 will remain as it is, not A2, right, Ankit? Why A2? It is source and destination. Destination is B2, right? B2 will remain as it is. E4, I excluded the mapping because I used the level as to mapping except component, and A5 will get mapped because I did not specify any specific rule for it, right? So this way you can handle different kind of mapping as you want with respect to different kind of rule sets. Understood the point, guys? This was for your plain basic structure. Now I have created a table case also, which becomes much more interesting now. So what I've done with the table creation is I've created two structures, structure 1, structure 2, and here it has got 4 components, and this component is a type deep one having again 2 components D1 and D2. Similarly, structure 2 has got again 4 components, and this is again referring to a deep component E1 and E2. Okay. Then similarly again here, but only one thing to observe here is all the components are different: A1, A2, A3, A4, B1, B2, B3, B4. Now come below here, the deep components are D1, D2, E1, D2. This and this is matching. The structure underscore 1 has got 4 components. This is referring to D1 and D2, and the structure underscore 2 has got 4 components which is having same identical components as struct underscore 1, A1 and A2. Only B3 and B4 is different, and this is again referring to a deep component E1 and D2 which is matching. Okay. Now LT source tab and LT destination tab. So 4 internal tables I have created. Okay. So now let's do one thing. Let's code here. So this is my declaration, right, which I showed you now. So now let's code in this place. So let us first put the values for the LT underscore SRC underscore tab. So for this, what I'm going to pass is here the first value I'll be passing is A1, A11, A2 equals to A12, A3 equals to A13, and now A4 equals to again value hash, and inside this again D1 equals to D11 and D2 equals to D12. Okay. Now I'll create 2 more records for the same. Now here I'll be changing this to 2131, 2232, then my 23 and 33. Similarly this one D21, D22, D31 and D32. Okay. Now guys, tell me, if I do write this statement LT underscore DEST underscore tab equals to corresponding hash LT underscore SRC underscore tab, what is the output, guys, that you are expecting? If I just write this statement, what is the output that you are expecting based on this? Can you tell me what is the output that you are expecting? So will LT underscore DEST underscore tab, will it have any value? Will it have any value? No, right? To cross check also, if I put a debugger, I'll go here again. So this is LTDST tab, right? If I do an F5, can you see any value coming? No, right? But here, if I go to LT source tab, this is the values which it had initially. But obviously, since none of the components are matching, it is not matching. So now can you see one of the biggest drawback of this operator, guys? One of the drawback, and that is the reason, that's why did we set up the plain basic fundamentals with respect to CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding to now achieve this. Guys, getting the point? So now if I go here, so now also one more thing for the other one also, just a second. So for the other one, LT source tab one also, let me just put some value and show you what will happen if you use the corresponding operator on that one. So if I do tab 1, okay, and here the same thing if I do, only thing is that here I put a tab 1 and a source tab 1. Now guys, tell me, this, so you saw that there is no mapping or no values coming, but do you expect the same kind of a behavior for this internal table also, or do you expect something else? What do you say? Guys, what do you say? Will I say no values for this also? So destination tab 1, right? So if I do an F1, F5, A1 and A2 will be mapped, right? Yes or no? But will B4 be mapped though D2 is matching? No, right? Here, no, right? Here also no, right? So here though these two mapping components mapped, but this failed, right? Yes or no? This failed, yes or no? So this is also one scenario where your corresponding operator fails and your CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding will come into picture. Now let's see that. So now what I'm going to do, CL ABAP corresponding, create method, okay. Now here exporting source LT underscore SRC, we will take the one where there was no mapping at all. LT underscore DEST underscore tab. And now for this mapping, what I'm going to do is, so for this mapping, now we are going to set value operator and I am going to revert back to the normal screen. So CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding, and then mapping table, now level 0 kind 1, so I'll be putting one more, okay. So inside this level, now for this level, what should I pass? Initially 0, right? Yes or no? Now kind equals to what? 1, right? Now source name equals to, so let me map B2 with A1. So here A1 will come and destination name B2, okay. Now I'll create one more line as such. For this I will map B1 with A2 now. B1 with A2 now. Okay. I'll create one more line and for this I will map A3 with B3 now. So guys, tell me, is the mapping done or do I need to do something else also now? With respect to the mapping table, is my job done? Now what about the deep structure? So for the deep structure, if I write level equals to 1, right? Level equals to 1, kind equals to 1. Source name D1, source name D2, and this will be mapped with E1 and E2, right? So now execute, right? And here in the source and destination, I need to write lt underscore src underscore tab and lt underscore so guys, am I going to get the correct output with this? Is everything fine? Okay, let's put a breakpoint. Let's put the debugger. Sometimes what is happening? So now this was my source tab. This is my destination tab. I do an F6. The value for B1, B2 and B3 came. Now let's go to B4. Oh my God, the values are blank. The values are blank. The values are blank. Why so? So what is missing? What is missing? So if you see, I have mapped A1 and B2, A2 and B1, A3 and B3. What about A4 and B4? What about A4 and B4? What about A4 and B4, guys? What about A4 and B4? Without this line, will the mapping happen? For the deep type, first it has to understand, right, that this component values are going to be mapped to this component values, and then out of that, if it's a deep type, then the further this component is going to be mapped with this and this component, right? So this was missing now, right? Now let me again activate and let me shoot the debugger mode. Now if you see, if I do an F6 and if I go here, can you see the values coming? Guys, can you see the values now? So understood, guys? What was the missing part? Okay, so this was all about your CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding and how you can use the same with respect to the level, the kind, the different values of kind, and the source name and the destination name that you want to map, which you can use the same to achieve. And if you have any kind of a complex mapping that you want to do with this kind of a scenario, then you can use this CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding class to achieve this dynamic mapping. Now let's move on to your modern ABAP OpenSQL, which we have already seen till now, that the way that we are writing our
question. Like I want to know, like, what is the procedure for mapping the dynamic internal tables? Like there we need to specify components, assigning the components. So in this case, how will we be utilizing those things?
I did not get your question. How will you be utilizing? As in, you need to map like this.
So I do not need to specify the component keyword before that dynamic internal tables field.
No, why? I am not specifying any component keywords. Are you seeing here? Am I specifying any component keywords?
But these tables are static internal tables. There are some dynamic internal tables.
Dynamic internal tables will not work here.
Okay, so for
tables
them,
needs to be defined. If you are using the concept of dynamic internal tables, then you again like you need to go ahead with your field symbol and memory concept only. Type any table, type any and all.
Okay.
But if you are transferring the values, once you get the value from the dynamic table, so suppose if you have the values right, then you can obviously map it, but then also corresponding operator maps on the basis of component, and CL underscore ABAP underscore corresponding also maps on the basis of component. Can you see here? It either looks for identical components or the components you specify. You cannot directly specify values. But in the dynamic internal table, once you're getting the values using assigned component and all, you will start passing the values to the work area and then append the same, right? Understood the point, Ankit? Anyways, you will see that when we today talk about field symbol and your dynamic tables and RTTS and RTTI. Okay. So let's move on to your modern ABAP OpenSQL. Yeah. So what I was talking about, if you have seen that now the way that we are writing our select queries are select from the source. Either it can be a database table or a view or a CDS view, or it can be any source. Then fields asterisk if you want to get all the fields, or the specifically if you want to specify the field names, then it is field 1, field 2 and so on up to whatever fields you want to specify. Then your where condition. So example, if you are writing any where condition equals to escape host sequence character, whatever ABAP variable or ABAP expression that you want to specify, then into table @result. Okay. The important things that you need to keep in mind while you are doing this is that all the field lists that you are using here, those will be comma separated. Any ABAP host variables that you are using, it needs to be escaped with @escape host sequence character. Into clause will always be at the end of the statement, and this obviously has a much more tighter syntax checks enabled. The benefit that you get with your modern ABAP OpenSQL is that you get a lot of functions inbuilt with it, which you can use now, which earlier was not available. Like you can use the numeric functions such as ceil, floor, round, div, mod, division, anything. The multiple string functions, which we will anyways be seeing in just a few minutes now, like concat, substring, upper, lower, which you can do all the manipulation at the runtime on the go while trying to pull the data from the DB itself rather than doing anything at the app server level. Similarly, you have date and time functions, dates, days, between dates, add days, that's add months. Similarly, you can use your case expressions and cast functions also, which comes very handy. And this modern ABAP OpenSQL comes into picture whenever you are on a high NetWeaver stack 7.4 and above, whether you are on S4HANA or an ECC. Someone I think asked me that question also, right? So Prasad, now did you get your answer? Prasad, I hope you got your answer, right? Okay, so let me show you first of all a scenario with that. So we'll be using a table called demo underscore expressions. Okay, so this is the table that I'll be using. Okay, and in this so first what I'm going to do, I'll be showing you two use cases. One, I'll be manipulating with this particular record which is having the ID as X. So if you see there, I have put purposely two characters. So char1 and char2 are the two fields, test1, 2, 3 and string. And another scenario we will be seeing with respect to the numeric functions. Okay, now what I want to achieve from this select query that I want to write is, I want to basically fetch my ID value. Okay, point number 1. Point number 2, I want to fetch that if my ID is equals to X, or it can be any other value, suppose A. If it is A, then I want to get small a. Otherwise, if it is X, then I want to get small x. Okay, I want to get this as text1. I want to get this as text2. I also want to get an output as concatenation of the both. Okay, and similarly, I want to get from the left side the first three characters, the length of the character one, then this one in a lower case, then I want to trim this from the right side, okay, then I want to left from the padding from the left side with small x, I want to do a kind of a right padding. So let me show you some of the common string functionalities on this particular record. So I'll close this. So select from demo underscore expression fields. So first of all ID. Now what did I say? If it is capital A, then I need A, or if it is capital X, then I need X, right? So that calls for a case expression, right? Yes or no? That calls for a case expression, because if, else if, and all those will not be supported in your SQL query. So that basically calls for a case expression. But now again I am clubbing two things. If it is A, then A. Otherwise, if it is X, then X. So then you can use a qualsic operator. So here write case ID when A then A, okay, and then again case ID when capital X then small x, and you need to end it, otherwise it will throw an error. And after that, as I'll write qualsect underscore ID. Okay, so now after this what I want the char1 as field name with text1, char2 as text2. Okay, now I need to concat. What I want to concat? I want to concat char1 and char2. Char1 comma char2, okay, as concat text. Now there is also one more feature called concat with space also. So concat with space, this one. So if you use this one, then you need to specify the number of space that you need. So char1 comma char2 comma 1 as concat space. Now apart from this, what I want to do, I want to use the in-string feature, instr from char1, and I want to, that was the value was test1 2 3, no, let me provide 1 as instr. Similarly, let me put for the char1, it was test1 2 3. So from the left side, I want to get that position left char1. So left char1 comma 3, from the left side I need the 3 characters as left. Similarly, you can use length also. So if you use length, pass suppose char1 as length, then apart from length you can use lower also. So suppose lower I will do for char2 as lower. Then if I want to L pad, or I will do a R pad. So suppose let me do a L pad char1, total length I need is 10, and I want to pad it with X, L pad. Similarly, if I want to trim char1, so R trim, I'll trim it from the right side, char1 comma space, okay, as R trim. Now I want to replace. So for the replacement functionality, what I want to do is, I want to replace what? So suppose char1 has got 1, 2 inside. So let me replace char1. Then I want to replace that 1, 2 with an underscore. Okay. As replace. And then from the right side also, suppose let me get the value of char1 and the 3 characters. Okay, from the right side the 3 characters as write. So LPAD I talked about, RPAD I'm not going to show because similarly from the right side. Now yeah, substring, one more important thing. So substring char1, let me do from the 3rd position, then the 3 characters. So as substring and where id equals to capital X and into table, no, not into table because this is single data, into @data. Let me put this into result. Okay, and now let me show you the output. So CLDEM output display, and now here I'm going to pass the value result so where did it go with an error? Okay, let me see. Oh, I am fetching a single data, no? So I'll need to use select. Yep. Select single. So now let me show you the output. So can you see here? For capital X, it became small x. So for text1, test1 to 3, text2 string, concat without any space, concat with a space, instr1, right? I did know char1, 1. So if you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th position, right? It has given you the 5th position of the in-string value. The in-string position of that particular in the type I. So it will give you the specified 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th position. Then left side char1, 3. So from the 3rd position, what is happening? 1, 2, 3, these 3. So this is the output. The length of this one, 4 plus 3, 7, 7. Then lower of the text2, lower came, right? Similarly, what we did, LPAD, so LPAD test 1, 2, 3, 7, but I gave the length as 10, so triple X came into picture. Then rtrim, so if there is any additional space on the right side, it will be trimmed and there will be no spaces. Then 1, 2 I replaced with underscore, so test underscore 3. From the right side I needed 3, so I got 1, 2 and 3. Substring as S21. So what did I give? 1, 2 and 3. So 3, 3. From the 3rd position, pick up the next 3 characters. So 1, 2, 3. So ST1 as the substring, right? Now tell me one thing. Here, when I am trimming the same, so what I can do is trimming this one, right? So can I, when I'm replacing this, can I use trim, and within this inside can I use replace? Getting my point, what I'm trying to say? Can I do that? So what I'm telling is, can I use like this? Can I use this feature? Yes or no? So now if I activate the same and if I show you the output, now can you see this space is there? Can you see the space is not there anymore? Yes or no? So if I remove, if I comment this out now, and if you see, and sorry, let me activate the same. If you see here, the space which was coming, anyways, I have commented or replaced, that space is not there anymore, right? And now, can I club this also? So if I club LPAD and here now with this one, and I replace this with this one, can I do that? Can I start making it more complicated now? What is the expected output that you are going to achieve now? Tell me. So now if I do an F8, can you see here this part? Now if I completely lower this part, so this part what I achieved here, okay, I'll comment this part, now this part, and now if I do an activation now and if I show you the output, will everything be small, yes or no? Yes or no? Now I need the length of this one to check. Can I put this one here and put this one here? Can I do this one? Can I activate? What is the output that I'm expecting? Are you seeing the fun? Are you seeing the fun? Now, substring of this one. So now I'll do this, and here I comment this part. I'll put here comma. Instead of this, I put this. Substring obviously. Alternative name you cannot replicate. I'll comment this part. Now see the fun, guys. What is the substring you're going to expect? What is the substring that you're going to expecting? So activate substring. Let's see the substring value. Can you see XXT? Now from the right I need. So right I need for this particular substring. Can I make it much more complex? Guys, tell me. What is this? Can you see the fun happening? And now if I do an F8, this is what I was telling. Modern ABAP OpenSQL has now become much more stronger. So Raja, how did you like it? If you see here, right substring, lower, LPAD, rtrim, replace, everything is together at one go. Guys, want to say anything before I move on to numeric function? Shall I move to numeric functions since I showed you string? Or shouldn't I? Tell me, you don't want to see the fun, or should I move ahead to the next topic? Okay, so let me show you the numeric function now. So this was all about string functions. Now let's go to numeric functions. Okay, so select from demo. Now here, before I proceed, let me first set up the scenario. I forgot. So for this, now observe carefully here. Observe here, guys, carefully. Apart from X, I want to get the data into the table apart from the ID which is not X. Okay, my first condition. My second condition is, whenever you find any zero value for number 1 or any zero value for number 2, I want that to be replaced with 100. I want that to be replaced with 100. Second thing, I want to divide and to find a ratio between number 1 divided by number 2. But if it is 0, obviously I will be getting a dump. So then use the modified number value. Okay. And the other thing is that if the number divide, also use the division operator and the mod operator. Similarly, if the number 2 is 0, use the modified number value. Also add that I will have an offset value, suppose 100, which I'll be setting up to replace this 0. Also one more requirement is that I want to add that offset value with the absolute difference between number 1 and number 2 and show the entire data with respect to this summation value as in the offset plus absolute difference in the descending order. Is my question clear, guys? Is my question clear? So let's move ahead. So select from demo underscore expressions, fields. So fields what? ID, comma, num1, right, comma, num2, okay, comma. Now callback operator. Why? What did I say? Case num1 when 0, then at the rate offset value, I'll provide an offset value. So data pass this offset value with 100, okay, then at the rate offset and case num2 when 0, then at the rate offset and as modified number, okay, then cast. So for this cast, now for this cast, whenever you want to, why I am using a cast before that, if I just write num1 divided by num2, okay, if I just write num1 divided by num2 as ratio, if I just use this num1 divided by num2 as ratio, do you think that there is any issue in this one? So for the time being will come. Wait. So what is the issue? JS, can you tell me if I just use num1 equals to num2? What is the issue? Okay, num2 should not be 0. Fine. Any other issue which you feel? Any other issue? So you are telling num2 should not be 0, right? So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, understand the first issue before I proceed further. I am using a division operator, right? Not plus, minus and multiplication, right? So only the operators with plus, minus and multiplication can be used in the arithmetic expressions with the integer type or decimal type. Here the operator has like the slash is not allowed. Now what you need to do for this is you need to convert this to as an FLTP, floating type. How can you do that? Use the cast operator. Use the cast operator, okay, FLTP, fine. And then similarly here also cast num2 as FLTP. But is my problem sorted out? Is my problem sorted out, guys? There is a num2 is 0 also in one instance, right? You saw that, right? So, but I cannot use this alias variable here. So what do I do? So instead of num2, can I write qualsec, and here case num2 when offset, if it is 0, then use the offset, else use num2. Can I do that? Yes or no? Yes or no, guys? Now similarly, I wanted to use the division operator. So for num1 comma num2, but again num2 has got a problem here, right? Num2 has got a problem here, right? Where did I use inline declaration? Okay, sorry. Now see, the problem is num2 is also 0 in some instances, right? So what I can do, can I use this same scenario here? Can I use this same scenario here? Yes or no? So I'll put this, instead of num2, I'll put this. Similarly, I wanted to get the mod value. So mod num1 comma, I can write num2, but I cannot write num2 because it is having 0. So as mod, and after that what did I say? Offset plus absolute difference between num1 minus num2, okay, and as sum. Guys, done. Now if I activate the same and also order by descending. Now if I activate, it is activated. Now let me show you the output. Oh, I have not displayed only anything. So now let me show you the output. Guys, can you see the output? This 0 became, if it was num2 was 0, this became 100, right? If num1 is 0, this became 100, right? Rest all, there will be no consequences in the change in the output because nothing is 0 out of it. None of the case expression satisfied when I am using that qualsec operator. And accordingly, the other values within the ratio, the division operator, the mod operator and the sum. And since I did order by sum descending, this has shown me the output in the descending order. Guys, is it clear? So Ankit, why did I use cast again was, if I just write, if I comment this line, Ankit, num1 divided by num2 as ratio, okay. So you will get an error here because only plus, minus and multiplication operators, as in the arithmetic expression, it can be used with integer or decimal type. For this, you need to use the floating type. Now to change this from one type to other type, that's where my cast expression is coming handy, Ankit. And that is the reason, if you see, why cast was used. Similarly here also cast was used, and inside that, since num2 was having 0, so qualsec was used, and inside that case expression was used. So can you see how can I use multiple expressions together? And that is the reason why I said now your modern ABAP SQL has become much more stronger. And let me show you a scenario from here. If you see this, I'm just trying to, there is a date, okay, and while trying to fetch the data from EKKO, I am trying to get rid of all the leading zeros from the purchase order number, Okay. Then I'm checking for the doc type. If it is NB, then standard PO. If it is this, then service PO, else other PO. Then I'm trying to get the difference between the PO created date and between the date on which I passed. Now if you see, this was a string value, but at the runtime on the fly, this will be need to be calculated, then this needs to be converted to DATS type. Your favorite conversion operator CONV. See, this came into handy picture here, the conversion operator. Similarly, I want to add the days with this 5 number of days with this created on. So I have used the standard functionality available, that's 8 days, where I have added 5 with this. To get the current timestamp, again you can use the standard functionality. You will get the current timestamp, where ABAP I have passed whatever purchase order numbers I want to filter out and order by primary key. So can you see, I've used case expression, I've used the string function, I've used standard functions for the dates and the days. I've used the CONV operator. I've used ABAP escape host sequence character because this is my ABAP expression, and I've tried to get my desired output. Guys, did you see that? And Ankit, I hope your doubt was clear, right? So guys, now what do you feel about modern ABAP OpenSQL? Do you still underestimate the same? So guys, can we have 3-4 minutes of break before we jump onto an interesting topic where we do a select query from an internal table? So let's connect it around 8:40. Guys, can we start? Guys, can we start now? Hello? Are you there, guys? Okay. So now understand, if your NetWeaver version is 7.52 and above, then you can use another interesting concept on your systems, which is make use of select query on your internal table. Okay, and here also there are two things. If your data in the internal table is not required on the database, point number one, and point number two, if your data in the internal table is required on the DB. So it has got two features to it. If data is not at all required to be hit to the database, and if the data is required to be hit to the database. So when I talk about this scenario, what do you think about? Select query on an internal table, and the data of the internal table needs to be used at the database level for some purpose. Can you relate it with something else? Can you relate it with this and this? Yes or no, guys? Guys, what do you think? Yes or no? You have been using for all entries in, right? Select from database table for all entries in internal table. You do a join with the data which is there in the internal table. So let's first talk about the scenario where data in the internal table is not at all required in the database. Okay. So using select query from an internal table. So let me first of all quickly begin off, create some data ts underscore table. I'll get employee underscore ID and type num_c08 suppose, and email name, which will be 20. Then end of ts underscore table, tt underscore table, type standard table of ts underscore table with empty key. Okay, now data lt underscore tab, let me comment this line, equals to value operator tt underscore table and emp underscore id. Let me give some random value 90101 and suppose Prasad, and let me create one more record out of it. And one more record. So this one I'll make it 102 Ankit and 103 as Thomas suppose. So this internal table is now obviously, if you just show you the output, CL demo output. And if I just show you the output now, so can you see the leading zeros are also coming, right? Okay, and your employee email name. Now I tell you that select from, what I want to do is I want to fetch data from this internal table, the employee ID and the email name, where the employee ID is 90101. So select from, if I want to fetch data from internal table LT_tab, you need to mandatorily use an alias name, then fields. So what fields? Employee_ID, comma, email_name, where employee_ID equals to 90101, and let me put it up into a table only so that it will be easy for me to display, and result 1. And now I'll use this, and so whenever you are doing a select query from an internal table, if you do not write this, obviously you need to use an escape host sequence character, right? Because this is not a database, yes or no. We already understood that. This is not a database, this is not a projection view, not a DB, not a CDS view, nothing. So we need to make it understand that it's at the ABAP layer, right? And if you do not give alias, it will also throw an error, because whenever you are doing a select query on an internal table, an alias is mandatory. These two are mandatory. Okay. Now, if I show you the output, so you are getting this. But do you really think that writing a select query on this to get this kind of data is required, which I can easily achieve using a where condition also, right? Which I can easily achieve using a where condition also, right? But remember that this query is not executed at the database. This query is not executed on the database. So, though SAP is giving this option to write a select query, but it's up to you whether you want to really write this as this query. But now let me bring a different scenario now. What if I told you that from this internal table, you want to fetch data. Okay, you want to fetch data, but you want to remove the leading zeros also from here. This is suppose the raw data that you got. Now from this internal table, I want to pass data to another internal table, but I do not want the leading zeros, and I want to concatenate this with @gmail.com. Now what do you do? Now what do? You now tell me. Suppose you take the scenario where you want to do a loop at internal table into work area and then remove the leading zeros from here by using the embedded string function, and then use the embedded string expression to concatenate, right? That is one option, right? That will be one option which you can use in your for iteration, yes or no, value operator with the for iteration, because directly corresponding to you cannot do because it does not allow to manipulate on your components. Using a value and a for expression, which you will be doing that, right? Now, can I do it using a SQL query also, yes or no? So now here, if I write ltrim, okay, employee ID, comma, 0 as employee underscore ID, and now for this email name, I will concat this is in, suppose this was coming, suppose make it completely lower email name, and then concatenate this with @ gmail.com as email_id. But now can you see the select command is now throwing you a message that it is executed on the database? Because I've started using these features on it, the string functions, the lower function, the concat function, and to suppress that, if you want to suppress that, what you can do is, so now first of all let me show you the output, and let me remove this where condition. So I'll activate this one. I have done an F8. Now can you see all leading zeros also gone and a concatenation also done. But before this, initially the first instance which I wrote, at that instance it was not executed on the database, but now it got executed on the DB. But is the data actually required at the DB? Is the data actually required at the DB? Yes or no? This data I am trying to manipulate at the app server level, right? So to suppress this warning which is coming, because I do not want this execution to happen at the DB, use a pragma #db_feature_mode and then I'll write itabs in underscore from clause and hashtag itab db_select. And now if you activate, can you see the warning is gone? So use these two pragmas to suppress that warning which is coming. And now this will be executed not at the DB, it will understand that the data is not required at the DB, just that the manipulation that I want to do with the select query. So rather than using a value and a for expression, so suppose this is less data, if you have got a lot amount of data, if you get a huge lot of amount of data and you want to do the manipulation, sometimes if you run a stat and try to see this gives a better performance. You can try to do that. Now you understood understood the scenario, whoever was asking me with respect to one instance and use case of SQL SN. Now you understood why I showed you one use case here. That initial point was just to make you understand how the expression looks like. Now, with respect to the complex cases coming up on your app server, and if you directly want to make use of the SQL functions to achieve the same, which you feel that it gives me much more flexibilities, and you get to do, because you get your standard SQL functions coming into picture here, right? And there you can achieve, rather than writing so much code with for or component and all those things, even with the new syntaxes also, you can think about this option as well. Now, let me show you one scenario. Now let's go to the other part where data is really required on the DB server. Okay. So, one second. Let me close and load the Eclipse once again. One second, guys. Yeah, till it loads. So till now we saw the scenario where we talked about where the data in the internal table was really not required on the database. Now let's see the scenario where data in the internal table is required to be fetched from the DB, do a join or something, perform any calculation or aggregation, and see how it behaves then. Okay, so let me so now think of a scenario. Let me show you this table. So in this table, if I show you the output, suppose you have an internal table. Understand the scenario. You have an internal table which is having char ID as AA and 0017, okay, and another row char ID as AZ and 0555. Now what I want is, with the help of this internal table, both the rows, I want to get char ID, con ID, summation of the price with respect to all the rows matching from S-flight with respect to those particular rows in the internal table, the summation of the prices and the currency. Now guys, tell me one thing, to achieve this aggregation, the amount of the total sum, currency and all, can I achieve it using for all entries in? Is it achievable? Tell me. Guys, can you achieve it using the concept of for all entries in? What do you think? So what I'm telling is, suppose I have an internal table, types begin of, then char ID, type S underscore char underscore ID, then your con ID S underscore, and now let me put a data LT underscore FLT, type standard table of LTY underscore FLT with empty key, and here LT underscore FLT, what I'm telling was value operator, and here value hash, and now again char ID equals to AA, con ID equals to, and one more record which I talked about, AZ, and now guys, tell me, this LT underscore FLT and the database table S-flight, I want to do an aggregation for the corresponding matching rows from this internal table. Based on the records on this internal table, I want to do an aggregation of the price and show the char ID, con ID and the price and the currency. Can I achieve the same using for all entries in? Can I achieve the same? Harish, you are telling yes. Anyone who thinks that it cannot be achievable by using for all entries in? Anybody who thinks that it cannot be achievable using for all entries in? First of all, Harish, you cannot achieve it using for all entries in. Point number one, for all entries in does not support any aggregate function apart from count asterisk. can't use any aggregate functions apart from count asterisk. Biggest restriction, I wanted to do the summation, it fails there itself, right? Second point, when you are using an aggregate function, will you use group by clause, yes or no? When you are using an aggregate function, will you use group by clause, yes or no, guys? You cannot use group by clause in your for all entries in. No group by clause. Third thing, what I was telling, that I also want to show the output in the basis of order by your char ID or whatever I want to display. Okay. So normally what happens, either we can write order by primary key or order by the field names, right? So in your for all entries in, plain order by as in the field names is not allowed. So guys, now do you say your for all entries in fails, right, to achieve the requirement? Yes or no? The requirement that we were talking about, here your for all entries in fails or not? So what can I use here now? If this fails, how do I get the requirement? Will I do everything at the application server? That is also one option, right? We understood the reduce operator also. We had the conventional control break processing commands also, right? Tell me. Guys, am I audible? So you want to use joins, who told you? So Harish, you want to use joins. How do you want to use joins? Can you please unmute and tell me?
One way is to use the select statement within that one select statement. Can we use that?
So you do not want to do any select query on an internal table?
Where you can use, I don't know, where material is equal to, then in the bracket we can use select from.
So do you think that is really advisable using a nested select within a select?
That's one option.
And what if I say that you make use of this select query in an internal table and achieve the required feature, won't you be happy?
Yeah, that is a new feature. Yeah, that is joined between internal table and a table. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So now let me show that. So select from @_LTFLT as A, okay, inner join sFlight as B on char ID equals to B char ID and A con ID equals to B con ID, then your fields, then your wherever you want to fetch from char ID and A con ID. Now sum of from B price as price, then let me get the currency also, B currency. Now group by Group by what? Char ID, con ID and currency. A char ID, A con ID and B currency. Then order by A char ID into table @ data and LT underscore suppose I tab and done. And now let me display. So I'll use this, I'll comment this part and I'll use this, and here I'll replace this with LT underscore I tab. So now let me show you the output. So this was the older one. Yep, sorry. Yeah, this was the older one. Now this is the output. Can you see? I got the sum also for the total matching records based on char ID and con ID from S-Flight. Got the summation, printed the summation along with the currency, and the same thing applies for the char ID AZ as well. If I had done this through your app server, I would have to first get the data from this corresponding for these records, right? Example for all entries in also, since it is not supporting with all the restrictions. So if you use that, you will get the data and then you will use a reduce operator to get the summation, and then you will construct a new internal table and print the output. Am I right? Yes or no, guys? So how many steps are you getting? Even though you are writing a select query, or you can use a collect statement also. But still you will be doing the processing on the app server, right? Yes or no? But here did I do the processing at the app server? I knew that the data is required at the database. One more important thing is that if you use a select query with an internal table on a join, and if you're using a union or union all clause, remember that once you use this internal table with an alias name for join, you cannot use the same internal table for another union statement. You cannot use the same internal table. No, here you don't require pragmas, right? Okay. See, why did I use pragma? I knew that at that case the data was not required on the DB. Here, so anyways, the data is required on the DB, right? Understood, Prasad? One second, guys. So Prasad, you got the point why I didn't use any pragmas here. If you see here, see in this case, the concept that I am using with join and all, we know that the data is required on the DB and we want this to be executed on the DB. So Loganathan, there can be multiple scenarios which you can try to achieve. You can try that out and let us know with different scenarios. So example, if you see here, this char ID and char ID. So since you are using a select query, if you want to convert from one type to other, you can use your escape host sequence character and convert the same and try to manipulate. If you have a different data type and you want to point out the same and try to get the data. Understood, Loganathan? You can play around with this particular variant now. The only restriction which will come into picture is if you are using a internal table to get data from a select query and using an alias name, the same internal table you cannot use if you are using an union or a union all. So then in that case, if you want to use the same, what you can do is pass data to another temporary internal table and use the same. Understood, guys? Just make a copy of the same and use with a different name. Then it will solve your purpose. In case if you come across with such requirement. Okay? Okay, let's jump on to the next part now. So field symbol and dynamic internal table. Now Ankit will see. So field symbol and dynamic internal table, suppose I have got column A, column B, and it has got 2 records. So let me put it here. Yeah. Column A, column B, and it has got 2 records. Suppose this is column A and this is column B. Okay. Now for the first record, the value is 10 ABC. And for the second record, the value is 20. And now the value is XYZ. Suppose I want to change this from XYZ to DBC. So guys, tell me, with respect to field symbol, first of all, for just this scenario, internal table having 2 columns A and B, 10 and ABC and 20. So if I want to change from XYZ to DBC, what are the different approaches that I can take? One approach could be, I will modify, first what I'll do, with the help of the work area, so I'll read this particular row, right? Get the value and then modify the internal table by changing the work area value, modify the internal table from work area. That is approach number 1, right? The oldest approach, yes or no? Second approach could be, can I do read table and assigning a field symbol, and then for that particular field symbol component I change the value, the internal table will also be modified, right? And what is the third approach which you have learnt in this particular training sessions? What is the third approach? What is the third approach? Can anyone tell me if you can recall? Remember table expression on the right position on the left hand side. Table expressions on left hand side with respect to right position. Can I do that? Why Qualsec operator, JS? Why are you going into Qualsec operator? I'm just dealing with a table, internal table record. We are not dealing with the database table record. JS, now understood? I am dealing with the internal table record. So I can use the third approach also, right? Table expressions on the left hand side with the right position, yes or no? Can't I write for this internal table itab for this second row, which is having suppose A equals to 20, for that particular value I can write it DBC and the value will get changed, yes or no? Or index value 2 and specified with 20, it will get changed, right? itab 2A, why A? The column is B, right? Why A? Ankit, why A? I want to change this, right? XYZ to DBC, not this. Okay. If you want, you can change that also. That obviously you can change. So now, with this basic concept of field symbol, so if you see here, so now with this field symbol and the field symbol declaration that we do, so one concept which comes into picture with respect to the dynamic internal table is the memory allocation. That is assignment of this field symbol to memory. So what example, if you have a scenario wherein you do not specify any database table in your code, you will pass the database table at runtime, as in you will pass the, suppose if you have a parameters, you will pass the database table name and you want to get all the data. How do you think of handling the same? How do you think of handling the same? So first of all, we will allocate a table memory based on the table name that you are specifying, right? We need to allocate the memory based on the table name that you are specifying, right? And once you allocate the memory, we will assign this particular memory to the field symbol, which will be type any table. Once you have done this, what will happen is that, so that if you write a select query to get the data from your database table, so where can you get the data? Now you can get the data onto your field symbol, which is type any table, because this is pointing to this table memory allocation, yes or no? Right? Once you have got the data into type any table, can I access this entire thing within a type any to access any particular line of that field symbol, which is type any table? Can I do that? Can I do that? So this has got all the row. Now to access a particular row, can I have a field symbol type any to access a particular line of this? And once I have a field symbol type any to access a line, can I get all the individual components of that line by using another field symbol? Can you understand this sequence? Is this sequence clear? How I am breaking it up into multiple field symbols? Now let's understand this from a code perspective. So let me just comment this part. And so now what I'm going to do is parameters p underscore tab type, suppose tab name, yeah, okay. Now what did we say? Let us first declare all the field symbol in dynamic memory. So step 1, declare all dynamic memory, okay. So can I write field symbols first of all? For the first field symbol, any table. So can I write fs tab type? What am I going to write? Type any table? Yes or no, right? Now for the second, the work area. Work area, can I write this to type any? And for the individual components of the work area, fs field type any, okay, fine. Now for the dynamic memory that I will be allocating to the field symbol, so data dynamic memory type reference to data, right? Now what I'm going to do, what did I say first? Now that memory allocation will happen based on the table name. So this dynamic memory that I'm going to create, based on the table name that I will be entering. So step 2 is allocate memory based on table name passed by user. So how am I going to do? Create data, then dynamic memory. After that, type table of, and within bracket whatever is the table name. So table name is p_tab. So memory allocation is done. Now since memory allocation is done, this dynamic memory type reference to data, I declared it, then I allocated memory based on this table name. So now what I'm going to do, if you refer to this diagram, this memory allocation, I want to point it through a field symbol, type any table. Can I do this? Assign what? This dynamic memory, can I assign this to this variable? Yes or no? I need to point this with this type any table to this dynamic memory allocation, right? So assign dynamic memory to fs_tab, right? Now the select query to get the data. So suppose select from p_tab fields asterisk into table @data, no, right? And now here what I'm going to write? Here what should I write, guys? Tell me. Here which variable should come? Into table what? Isn't it this variable to get the data? Yes or no, guys? So here fs_tab and up to, suppose let me fetch 10 rows. Now that I've got the data, can I do loop at fs_tab assigning work area, right? And end loop, and inside this loop at, now let me use an infinite while and while loop to get all the components, and while assign component, so for which psi index of structure, which one? WA, right? To fs_field, right? If psi sub rc is not equals to 0, then we need to come out of this loop. And if, and here I'll write an exit and post this end while. Within this end while I'll write the field name, and after this end while I will break the line, because all the components of a particular row would have been written. And here it is fs_field. So now let me show you the output. So if I pass SPFLI here, can you see the output coming? So whatever table name I passed, so that table name, what happened? First we allocated the memory. So data dynamic memory type reference to data, create data, then dynamic memory type table of whatever table name we passed. So table memory allocation was done. After that, for this table memory allocation, we will point out two field symbol. So assign dynamic memory to that particular field symbol so that this can point to this one. Then once we are writing a select query on the table name that we are passing, automatically this will come into this records, right? Now here, after that, how do we point out to each individual lines of this particular field symbol type in a table? By loop at field symbol, assigning the another field symbol which is type any. And once you go here, after that, how will you get all the components for that particular line? Assign component. Why I am using sign index? Because for that particular line, to access that line, it will have multiple components, right? So that's why sign index of structure WA to this particular field value till it becomes not. If it fails, then you exit. Otherwise, you keep on writing it. Now here, rather than writing this, if I would have done assigning field symbol here, and I would have done it here, commented out this line, right? Now again, if you would have done a field symbol here and done here, is there any issue if I do like this? Guys, is there any issue if we do like this? I'll be getting the same output, right? You will be getting the same output. So just I showed that it is referring to type any, but even with inline declaration also, you don't need dynamic memory allocation as in Prasad. So you are telling this line number 1204. Are you talking about this line, Prasad? Okay, this one, okay. Now see the trick. So if I don't do this, I write this, okay. fs underscore tab. So here what you are going to write? Into @ field symbol or what? Or what you are planning to write? This is a field symbol which you needed, right? Prasad, tell me. You are planning to write a field symbol here. It doesn't support field symbol. What do you plan to write? You want to write a data and then an internal table. But if you write the internal table, how will you reference the same then? Without using the concept of this dynamic concept, how will you get the data then? Tell me, Prasad. So suppose if I comment this out, okay, I comment this out, okay. I wrote this statement into table @data, suppose LT underscore tab 5. Now tell me one thing, what is this that you are writing? First of all, Prasad, do I know my internal table name? So if I write like this, okay, can you see here? P tab is not declared as a table projection view, database view. To avoid that, what I did this, right? Step number 1. Now since I did this, if I write this an internal table, can you see the other error coming? Only if the projection list and from the from clause are specified statically and no host variables are typed generically. Prasad, did you get your answer? This relates to this and this relates to this. So the below is not possible as we want this to be achieved dynamically. Now the biggest problem of this is, this is a static table, right? This is a database table, right? Which has got a fixed components. What if now I try to pass an internal table? The problem with this is, this does not support internal tables. That is our biggest drawback of this part, this feature. And to solve the purpose to make it generic for all such cases, To solve this purpose, to make it generic for even for internal table also, here comes your best savior, ABAP runtime type services, because they allow you to get the definition of data objects or to create them during program execution. That is the benefit. And it has got two components. One, runtime type identification, which will help you to create the line type and the table type based on the components that you are trying to pass, and runtime time creation to create your table type on the line type that you are trying to create. So RTTI and RTTC, these are the two components. Runtime type identification and runtime type creation. Runtime type identification will help you to whatever you are passing, whether an internal table or a table, it will help you to get the line type out of the same. It will create a line type dynamically, referring to whether the internal table components or the DB table name, whatever. And then to create based on the line type that you are getting, your RTTC will be helpful, that it will help you to create. So basically, these are nothing but a concept of a kind of a set of classes and the respective methods of those classes which you will be using for the RTTI and RTTC. And the classes are kind of a CL underscore ABAP underscore asterisk, because here this asterisk will either be a type DSCR or table DSCR depending on how the use cases will be. Now coming to this same use case, which now for the same use case, okay. So if you see here for the same use case, now yet what we were doing, dynamic memory, type reference to data and so on, right? So now instead of this allocate memory based on the table name, if I comment this part, okay, and now what I'm going to do is, so let us use some standard classes and methods. So LO underscore struct. So suppose, let me declare them first. Here. So LO underscore struct, type reference to CL underscore ABAP underscore, there is something called CL underscore ABAP underscore structure DSCR, okay, for the structure declaration, and LO underscore tab type reference to CL underscore ABAP underscore table description. These two. So now what I need to do is, if I pass the table type, if I pass the database table name, I need to create a line type, right? I need to create a line type, yes or no? Yes or no, guys? Because now I'm going the other way around, right? Based on the line type, then create the table type, then allocate the memory, right? So the line type, how will I be creating? So LO underscore struct. Now I need to use the concept of downcasting here, because I am going to get it from CL underscore ABAP underscore TYPDESCR, and then describe by name, describe by data. If you are passing any internal table with data, you can use this. But I have my database table name, so describe by name. And what I'm going to pass here, P underscore tab. Okay. Now that I created the line type, okay. Now what I'm going to do, if just for your knowledge purpose, or if you can, it may come handy also. So if you want to get the components from this LO struct, what you need to do is that you can just write data itab, suppose components, LO struct, and can you see these components? This will give you the components of the same. if you want to get the components. Okay. Anyways, now coming back. So now I got my line type. Now from this line type, I can try to create the internal table dynamically. Okay. How can I create the internal table dynamically from this line type? So LO underscore table. Now for this LO underscore table, CL underscore ABAP underscore table DESCR. Now use this class. And from this, use the create method. Okay. And into this create method, can you see this line type? I do not need the other stuffs. For this line type, what I'm going to pass is this LO underscore struct. So create I can use this also. LO tab, okay, sorry. LO tab, yeah. So I got the line type dynamically, and from the line type, now I have created the internal table dynamically by passing the line type. Runtime type identification, identification of the line type, runtime type create. Now after that, now that I have created the internal table dynamically, now I need to allocate the memory by using this concept of runtime type creation. Create data type handle. Like I was allocating the memory here, right? Now here to allocate the memory, what am I going to do? Create data. Here similarly dynamic memory which you have. So here dynamic memory. Now here you need to write type handle of LO underscore tab. Now your table memory allocation to this dynamic memory, right? And once you have got this, now what? Can I use this same step again? Can I use the same step again? Yes or no? Once I am done with this part, can I use this same step again? Guys, tell me, will rest of the steps remain the same or not? So I activated. Now if I do an F8 and pass SPFLI, see the same output came. Only the thing was that I here at this step, using the concept of RTTI by using the class CL underscore ABAP underscore type description. Here I got by describing by name By passing the table name, I got the line type dynamically. From the line type, I created the table type, LO underscore tab. From CL underscore ABAP underscore table description, create by passing the line type. Then by using the concept of RTTC, now here what we did, we created the dynamic memory allocation and after that assigned the dynamic memory to a field symbol. Now Ankit, if you want to pass internal table in RTTI argument, here what did I say you had described by name? No. So example, if you do describe by this data, describe by data, you can pass the internal table and you will, this LO underscore struct will have a line type based on the internal table components. And that's why I showed this line number 1212. If you want to see your internal table components, LO struct, and after that if you use these components, so let me uncomment the same. Let me show you now. So example, let me put the debugger mode. Item components, can you see? F5, can you see all the components coming? Ankit, now did you understand if I do describe by data internal table, all the components with their type kind will come. And then you need to, from this, then you need to map all these components names like how I have done here. Internal table with help of this component's name that will help you to map the data. Now, the assignment that you will get from this question, that is your assignment from this question is that, now that you have got the data into your loop at your your field symbol, which is basically type any table, which is you are getting the data from this, assigning the dynamic memory. Now what we want is, there is an internal table which will have char ID, con ID, country from, city from, country to, city to. You need to map the data to those internal table components from this particular loop by using this component like how we were using, and then build up that final internal table LT flight having those respective 6 components and then show up the output. Understood the question, guys? Suppose there is an internal table which is having 6 components. Char ID, con ID, country from, country to, city to. Now, once you have this entire data here, right? You have this entire data, yes or no? So once you have this entire data, map the components to those respective work area having those respective components, or you can directly build your internal table also. Pass all the data to another internal table which are having those components, and the data will be passed from this loop, because this loop will be having all those data for all the components, and then build up the another internal table. Understood the question, guys? Any doubts up to this point? Yeah, obviously the second method has extra lines of code, but you see the flexibility. I am not talking about from that affixed database source name. What if normally this comes very handy example, if you are getting data from an API, but you do not want to create a structure by giving all the component names, you want to get the data dynamically. Then what is the concept that you will be using? This is this dynamic memory concept only. You will get the data, type reference to any data, you will get all the data into that, and how will you dereference the components? By using this RTTI classes and RTTC classes. Normally your RTTI concept comes very useful because you will need to get this CL ABAP type description or CL ABAP table description or structure description. These all classes, CL ABAP table description, CL ABAP structure description. You will need to get this structure, line type dynamically, then assign component from those particular line type to the field symbol. So this dynamic memory concept and this RTTI concept, if you mix both the same, if you are trying to get data from an API and you do not want to declare the structure with all the components, you can get the data into a kind of a dynamic concept using this RTTI and the assign component and all these field symbol and memory concepts, right? Then you do not need to go into that you will need to declare each and every component. Understood the point? That's why I showed this way also. So Ankit, you are calling an API. That API has got 20 records. Each record has got 20 components. But I need only 4 components out of all the records to validate something. Will you create a structure with all the 20 components? One way is you create a structure with all the 20 components and then you map the data, right? Yes or no? But what if I do not need all the 20 components? I need only the dynamic columns on the basis of what I need. I will be specifying in the code. I do not want to declare it earlier. I will be specifying in the code itself what all components I need. You give me the data back. So based on those particular whatever column names, if I want to specify, which is the concept that you will use? You will use this dynamic concepts only, yes or no? So once you get these components, or once you get the data based on the component names, so what will happen? Can you see this get components? See this get components. So from this get components, there are many methods out of it. So once you get the data out of it, this assign component of the component name of the structure, these all dynamic concepts will come into picture then. And you do not need to write one on that. You can use this dynamic memory concept only to get your required output. Yes, Salman, you can also use assign component with the component name you know. Salman, you are not getting my point. When in an API you get data, the example anyways, you will see that in the next class. You will see that in the next class when we are getting data from an API. One way will be to put all the component names. Another way will be to, if you do not put all the component names, then you can try to pull data from your API using this dynamic memory concept. So Jay, that
normal report practice also before we move on to the API one, because I am not I'm very much confused in this.
So you can try that out, Ankit.
Okay.
That you can try it out because there is a lot of references available. You can try this concept. So anyway, the assignment will also be there. You can try that out. You can explore on that. You can try that out to play around. There is a lot of methods on this. So components, normally this dynamic memory concept we will not be using very frequently, but if need be, you should be knowing this, that this concept also exists and how you can use the same to get the columns.
Okay, Kabir, this is Salman. Sorry. So I recently I had to pull some data from SQL Server for multiple tables. So initially I tried this RTI, but I was not able to sell it to my team because they said the first method is easier and just we had like a couple of columns. So we used the assign component logic. So
yeah,
I was yeah. So that's what I want to know. Like, I mean, how do you sell it? I mean, one versus the other. What is the benefit of one versus the other? You know, when to use RTI and when to use the first method.
Simple concept is if you are using an internal table, you cannot. There is the biggest restriction is that if you have any internal table, you cannot use this method one which we were using. The create data dynamic memory, the concept that you were using, right? The other way around. You cannot use it because if you just try to do, what you try to do is, here you are doing create data dynamic memory type table of this part, right?
Right.
Just create an internal table and try to pass here. It will throw you an error. It will not accept an internal table here. It accepts only the static tables, as in the example, the database views, the database tables. It will accept only those. But if you want to pass any internal tables and all, then you need to make use of RTTI only, wherein you have described by name, similarly you have described by data, and in the data you can pass the internal table.
So let me get this. No, so you're saying you cannot pass the internal table like that. What we started this class, right? Like where you can select from it.
The first part that we did with respect to the dynamic memory allocation, that is the first approach. Before we went ahead to RTTI, as in line number 1209.
Right.
Here, just try passing an internal table, it will not accept.
Right. It has to be a dictionary table, right?
Right.
Okay.
But the feasibility that you get from this RTTI class is that here you have this method, see, describe by data. Can you see here?
Yes.
In this importing P data type any, right? This is type any. Here you can pass any internal table also.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Now I get it.
Now you understood, because of this flexibility, you can pass type any, so you can pass any internal table. So what I was telling, that if you know the component names, it's well and good, because you will write assign component, assign index. So instead of this assign component name, right? Assign component name of the structure to whatever field symbol, wherever you want to get the data. But if I do not know the component names from freehand, what will I do? How can I get the component names? I can go to line number 1212 to get the component names, right? And from there, this will come in a particular sequence. From this, you know which all components you want to get, right? You can have them stored into some variable or something. And now you can write assign component that particular variable of structure. So everything becomes dynamic, yes or no?
Yes, that I understood.
Now you understood the point?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Kabir, you have used an internal table in line number 1198. Can you please show us an example? 92, sorry. Yes, 1192. Select query, right?
So example C here, describe by, so here, make this describe by data, okay? And here, IT underscore itab, okay? Sorry, it is LT underscore itab. Okay? And now, as Salman was also asking, now see the fun. Now, let me comment this part. And let me comment this part also. And now if I do an F8, okay, one second, a dynamic type conflict will obviously come because I would have given something else. Okay, so if you do LO underscore struct now, I think I am missing something here which I need to check it. Just let me check the dump, 1 second. Okay, I am passing structure description, sorry. This is an LO structure, right? So, describe by data. What we will do is, I'm missing one step now. I'll need to check this part because I'm missing one step here. This, if when you pass this internal table, Quantity, quantity, price and currency key. It is giving dump because I'm missing one step which I'm not able to recall now. I'll show this to you in the next class, don't worry. I'm missing one step because of which the dump is coming. We can avoid this dump. Don't worry, I'll show this step in the next class.
Okay, thank you, Kabir.
This part I'll show you, don't worry. Like if I pass the internal table, how it comes. Any other doubts? Apart from this one, this I'll show you.
Yes, Ankit here. Kabir, actually, will you be showing us REST API calls tomorrow with these dynamic structures?
Dynamic structures I'll not do. That will be from your end because I'll show you the other way around. Like how you can use it. A dynamic structure, using the same concept, you can try it out from your end. Like how you want to get the data. But I will show you the other way around, which I normally follow. I use a static declaration only, but I use the concept of mapping while using static declaration, and I do not declare everything. I'll show you that way, the easy way out.
Okay.
This is obviously a tough way out, right? This is like many people get confused in this way out. I know that because, well, I also did in one instance, it became very confusing and like a lot of dumps like this used to come. And it becomes difficult in sorting out the issue also.
Yes, because everything is dynamic.
Right.
Yeah, Kabir, just one example that we use is in finance reports. We don't know if there is a finance report for a fiscal year, fiscal months, right? Number of months would vary based on the year. Certain times it's 12, at certain times 13. So
Okay.
at time we use this RTTI concept actually for building the columns.
So one scenario which I can also tell you what we used is in an API, when we got the data, we wanted to validate something. So rather than getting all the data, so we had used this dynamic concept only for that particular field only to get the data validate. And if that data is not proper, terminate the execution and send a response back to the API. So rather than doing everything, getting all the data, we just check for that particular column, and if that data was not as per what was maintained in a Z table, then we are sending a response back that the data that you are trying to send from the API is wrong. Please correct and rectify and resend the data back.
So Kabir, you did not declare all the columns.
No, I did not declare all the columns.
Actually, when I was trying, if any column was missing, I wasn't getting any data for that structure. So that was the problem I was facing. So let's see tomorrow. It would be interesting.
Okay, guys, one important information. 1 second.